Good evening, everyone. It's the appointed time to begin the meeting of the Columbia Gateway Urban Renewal Agency Board. And we'll start by roll call, please. Paula.
Diana Bailey.
Present.
Casey Coburn.
Present.
Tracy Dujic.
Present.
John Frederick.
Present.
Mary Grossman.
Present.
Darcy Long.
Present.
Tim McLaughlin.
Yes, present.
Dan Richardson.
Present.
Kathy Schwartz.
Present.
Okay, thank you, Paula. Next, the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would all please stand and join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next up is the approval of the agenda. Are there any additions or corrections that anyone would like to make to the agenda this evening? Seeing none, I would take a motion to approve the agenda as mailed.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion made to approve the agenda. Do I have a second?
I'll make a second. This is Darcy.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by thumbs up on camera where people can see you. Those opposed, same sign. The agenda is approved. Next up, approval of minutes. Those were emailed out to you for your review. Do we have any additions or corrections, or I will entertain a motion for approval?
I'll move to approve. Kathy Schwartz.
Thank you, Kathy. Do I have a second?
I'll second. It's Tracy.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by thumbs up. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, time now for public comment. Do we have anybody that wishes to address anything that is not on the agenda for this evening?
I do.
Okay,
Tony.
Tony?
Yeah, I just wanted to introduce myself. It's been a while since I've been.
She's going to need your name and address. And Paula, we could use you a little louder.
I have to sit really far from the microphone, but I'll try. My apologies.
Tony Zilka, 205 Washington, the Dalles, Oregon. And I just saw Alice today, and I wanted to join the meeting and say hi, and glad that it's been a while since I've been on the agenda or been in the Zoom meetings. Just glad to be here. They had the ODOT down here looking at the sidewalks and getting ready for the First Street renewal that they're doing on that today.
And Chair Grossman, if I can add, I've just been, I've had a bit of fun. I guess I'll say it's been fun this past month or so. I've gotten a chance to meet all of the property owners along the First Street project. I wanted a chance to meet with them personally ahead of the time when our friends at ODOT were scheduled to visit with them, just so they knew who the local person was. And it's just been a great fun to get to know Mr. Zilka and all the property owners along the frontage. He gave me a nice tour of his building and showed me his plans for it. And I'm just excited. The most exciting part, and maybe I shouldn't admit this on a public meeting, but I got to go up on the roof of his building, and the views up there are just phenomenal of the river and Lewis and Clark Park and everything. And if and when he gets the option of redeveloping his site, I just am really excited about the possibilities that are available on that property. So I wanted a chance to have him attend our meeting, but also to let you know that I've met with him, and I'm hoping to work with him in the coming months to make his redevelopment a possibility in our downtown. Let you know that I'm hoping to work with him in the coming. That feedback is not coming from me, but
Thanks, thanks, Alice. It was great having you there. I can email you. I'm going to email you the drawings, the architectural drawings that I have for the building. And if you want to share that with anybody in the Renewal Board, would that be interesting to everybody there?
Yeah, I think so. Be much appreciated, Tony. And Tony's been very gracious about taking people through the building if you haven't had a chance to see some of the work that he's done there.
We've got a little start going. We got some paint on the outside, but I can't wait to start cutting holes and putting windows in. We went through historic, so they're on board with putting windows and doors in this building to give it some light and make it look good.
Well, we're looking forward to that, Tony. It's a great project for the Dalles, and we appreciate you attending the meeting tonight. Do we have anybody else that wants to speak during public comment? If not, we'll move on to our discussion items for this evening. The Brownfield grants process. We have quite an opportunity there, and I'll turn it over to Alice for presentation.
Yes, Chair Grossman and members of the board want to I wanted to have our team that has been managing the EPA Brownfield grant come and present that project to us. They did give Mr. Farr and Jim Schweinoff gave a presentation to the City Council back in June. And this is it is a bit of an update on that presentation. So some of you have already heard this presentation, but I'm really pleased that this opportunity is available to property owners in the Dalles, and particularly the area of focus is in our urban renewal district. So it just adds one more thing that we can offer property owners as an incentive to begin the redevelopment process on their properties. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Schweinoff and Mr. Farr, who are here to present the PowerPoint. And also they're going to, Mr. Farr from Stantec is going to speak a bit about how we as an agency are using this grant for the Tony's building as well. So he'll cover that in his presentation, and feel free, I'm certain he's happy to have you answer questions as he goes along. Ask questions as he goes along, excuse me.
So my name is Jim Schweinoff. I work for the City of the Dalles. I'm the development inspector for the city, and I kind of inherited this project from Matthew Cleaves when he left the City of the Dalles. And so I kind of got in after the project had started. Following me will be Leonard Farr from Stantec. Leonard is our consultant on the project. Their company has done numerous brownfield grant projects throughout the city, and Len can go on into that into detail, but Len is kind of the expert for us. He is the person that we turn to and kind of guides us down the path because we really rely on his experience. So Len will be doing the slide presentation tonight, and he will probably be the person. I could stumble through some answers, but I would probably be looking for Len hiding in the network here to answer those questions. So I'm gonna turn it over to Len.
Great, thanks, Jim. And I'm going to share my screen. I think, Paula, do I have the ability to do that?
Yes, you do.
Okay, great. Okay, are people able to see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm going to talk today about the EPA Brownfield program that the City of the Dalles started. Officially, it started on October 1st of last year. And Stantec and City of the Dalles worked together in preparing a grant application that was submitted to the Environmental Protection Agency. And it was successful in obtaining $600,000 from the EPA to address brownfields. And as Alice and Jim, I think, already mentioned, we talked in the grant application about the urban renewal areas as being the focus for the project, not just the downtown area, but also out on 2nd Avenue. So I'll dive in here and talk a little bit more about the grant. So we submitted what was called a coalition assessment grant application. So that requires that there be 3 coalition members. So the City of the Dalles is what we call the lead for the coalition, and Wasco County and Port of the Dalles are the other 2 coalition members. And you can see the names here of the people that are the leads for the different organizations. Carrie Pipinich is the lead for Wasco County, and as probably all of you know, she actually works for MCED, but Wasco County uses MCED for economic development, so that's a natural fit. And Andrea Kloss from Port of the Dalles. So we refer to this project as a brownfield program. So here on the screen is the definition that the EPA uses for a brownfield. And I'm just going to let people read that. But what I like to think of as the definition for a brownfield, it can be any underutilized property, really, whether there's contamination or not. When you look at the EPA definition, they say reuse complicated by the presence or suspected presence of contamination. So, every time the program decides to fund a project on a piece of property, we do have to make a case to the EPA that it meets this definition. But I have found that I've actually never had the EPA turn down a site and say that's not a brownfield. So we've got a lot of flexibility in what we call a brownfield. And these are just a few photos of sort of stereotypical brownfields. We've got a dry cleaner in one of those photos. Photos actually from Las Vegas, as you might pick up on because of the palm tree. We've got an old gas station in the lower left and a manufacturing facility in the upper left. So all of these types of properties are commonly brownfields. If businesses like this close down, oftentimes they might sit idle for a while before a new use for those property is found. So after they have shut down and they're idle, these sites would all qualify as brownfields. And here's a few examples of sites that you might think, well, where's the contamination angle on these kind of sites? And as I've mentioned, typically you're not really required to have one. The upper left photo there is I believe it's an old Kmart, an old big box store that's obviously vacant. The lower photo there is really just a site where you don't necessarily know much about the history of this site just looking at that photograph, but because there are just a couple of small buildings on the site, that's obviously not the highest and best use of that property. So it could also be a candidate for brownfield funding. And a vacant lot. You look at the lot in the upper right there, you don't know what its history involved and whether that history may have involved contamination, but that site, would also be a good candidate to participate in the brownfield program. And here's a slide that really talks about why the EPA and the communities that apply for their brownfield funding might want to address their brownfields. The EPA really looks at the brownfield program as an economic development program. If you go to the EPA website, there's a lot of information there where they talk about the successes of the brownfield program, and most of those successes that they cite on their website are things like how many jobs have been created by the brownfield program, how much has the tax base, property tax base, been increased by the brownfield program, how much private investment has the program leveraged. So it's really, the EPA is an environmental organization, so there's definitely that environmental tie-in, but it's really the EPA's economic development program. So these other bullets, crime, squatting, illegal dumping, vandalism, obviously any community wants to do things that will minimize or eliminate those activities. Brownfields can result in a loss of tax base and jobs, and decrease not only the property value for the brownfield itself, but the properties that surround it, which impacts on neighboring properties. Brownfields can create both the drop in value as well as some of those items listed in the first bullet, not only on themselves, but on neighboring properties. And, some of these properties may have contamination issues that actually present a public health risk to the people that live nearby or work nearby. So those are all good reasons to address brownfields. So this slide is really just intended to kind of give an overview of the grant that the City of the Dalles has. I think I mentioned already that the value of the grant is $600,000. The grant period runs for 3 years, starting October 1st of 2020 and runs through September of 30th of 2023. And these are the types of activities that are most commonly performed under an EPA Brownfield Grant Program. Community outreach and education, a lot of that is making people aware of the program and that funding is available to potentially help them with their projects, whether they might be a prospective purchaser looking to acquire a brownfield property, or whether they might own a property that would be eligible to receive funding from the program. Phase 1 and Phase 2 environmental site assessments are really the meat and potatoes of these brownfield grants. And in fact, the EPA requires that at least a minimum of 50% of that $600,000 be spent doing Phase 1 and Phase 2 environmental site assessments. This is an assessment grant. It is not a cleanup grant. So doing environmental cleanup is not an eligible activity under this particular grant, but we can do what we call cleanup planning. So, what that would really entail would be if we do a Phase 2 environmental site assessment and we identify contamination that requires cleanup, we can take it just one step further to where we can kind of evaluate what the cleanup options are and what the cost of those cleanup options might be. In a lot of times a developer will look at an environmental issue as just one of many cost items, that they need to consider. Is the redevelopment that they have planned for the property financially viable? Where you run into a problem with an environmental issue most often is if it's an unknown, right? A developer, they don't like unknowns, but by doing the cleanup planning, we can turn what might be considered an unknown into a known. We can say, this is what you need to do to clean it up, and this is what it's going to cost. So that's a really valuable element of the grant program. We can also do reuse planning, and that can mean a lot of different things. We've got one project that we're looking at right now where we're still working on getting the EPA to agree that it's an eligible activity under the grant, but we're hoping that they will agree to fund preparing a conceptual site plan for a building downtown. When you're redeveloping a building and the owner would like to turn it into multifamily housing. So, when they seek funding for that project, having a conceptual site plan, a layout would allow them to talk to construction contractors and estimate what the costs of the project might be. So that site plan is something that is going to help to overcome the many challenges that this developer faces. So I'm optimistic that the EPA will determine that it's an eligible activity, based on that, but we're still waiting to find that out for sure. We can also, if we have a vacant site or a site where demolition of existing buildings is planned, and you want to look at what a reasonable layout for a new development might be, how big are the buildings going to be, how many stories, where are they going to be located, where is the driveways on and off the site going to be located, what about parking? We can prepare preliminary site plans that kind of do that analysis. We can also do market feasibility studies, for example. So that might mean if someone is considering, say, putting a new hotel in downtown The Dalles, is that a business opportunity that's likely to be successful? We could do a market analysis to help analyze that question. So lots of flexibility with the reuse planning. And area-wide planning is really more where if you've got a particular area of town where there is a preponderance of brownfields and you want to think about more holistically, rather than being an individual site, but look at an area. You can, again, evaluate a number of different things. You can look at transportation access, for example, what sort of road improvements might be necessary for sort of an area redevelopment. Is the infrastructure in the area adequate to sustain the plans for maybe a more dense development than has historically been there, those types of things. So, as I mentioned, this project started on October 1 of 2020, and we're just now getting into working on our first couple of projects. This slide really kind of shows a lot of the downtown, mostly downtown outreach that has been done. So you can see many of the property owners that the program has talked to see if they might have a use for the program, if they might be interested in participating. The two that I have here, sort of in orangish text, have actually submitted applications to participate in the program. The one there at the top at 209 East 2nd, that one is much further along than the second one there at 749 Snipes. That top site has been approved for participation in the program, and we've received all of the needed approvals from the EPA for eligibility, and the work on that site is moving forward. And the work planned for that site at 209 East 2nd is a phase 1 environmental site assessment, a regulated building materials survey, and also the conceptual floor plan or site plan that I mentioned. That's the site where we're hoping to be able to do that work. We actually just received what we call a nomination form, which is what we ask that people interested in participating in the program fill out and submit to us, and we'll use that in making a decision to accept them into the program or not. So since we just received that application yesterday, we're still working through the process of approval for that site. And this is kind of a map that just goes along with the prior slide showing the locations of the folks where we have done outreach in the downtown area. And my last slide, Alice mentioned that the Tony's building property is the third site that has submitted an application where the EPA should be approving the eligibility of this site. They actually promised that they would have it approved already today, but haven't gotten that email from them yet, but we're very close. And you can see here the type of work that we plan to use the Brownfield grant funding for. First of all is a phase 1 environmental site assessment, and the primary reason that we're doing that phase 1 environmental site assessment is Alice and others have been talking with Karen Homelak at Business Oregon, who runs the state Brownfield program, and it's likely that the Urban Renewal Agency could receive funding for cleanup of asbestos for this property. And one of the basic requirements that Karen has, if you are going to apply for funding with her program, is to do a phase 1. So we're doing a phase 1 for that reason. There's also an underground storage tank that we think is located along Federal Street here in the sidewalk. So our plan with that related to that tank is through the EPA Brownfield Grant Program, we're actually able to remove the underground storage tank in order to be able to collect samples beneath the tank and determine if the tank is leaked. So using the EPA Brownfield grant funds, we'll be able to not only collect those samples and test those samples and see if there's been a leak, but to actually remove the tank as well. And finally, cultural resources assessment. Because demolition of this building is planned, that will trigger doing a built environment Section 106 consultation with the Oregon SHPO office. So that also is an eligible expense under the grant. And, right now, we don't really know what might be required by SHPO in the way of cultural resources assessment. The way that process works is we'll start the consultation. There'll be some dialogue with the Oregon SHPO office about the assessment. That assessment likely will happen after demolition of the building has occurred. Because that, what they're interested in is potential artifacts that might be beneath the building. So it's much easier to access those artifacts after the building has been removed. So that particular, the cultural resources assessment is a little bit of an unknown until we start talking with Oregon SHPO, but that's also sort of on the plan for the EPA grant for this particular project. So that's my presentation, and happy to answer any questions folks might have.
Chair Grossman and members of the board, I just wanted to add something that I've really appreciated, the responsiveness of both Len Farr and Jim Schweinoff. I feel like we're a customer to this grant. We're a recipient of it, or we will be, of the services, and they have moved right along very, very quickly to help us get this work underway, and I'm really pleased with the progress we're making. And we're learning some new things about the sequence of, just like today, Len Farr was talking about how maybe the cultural assessment would be done after. We can do it more affordably after the building demolition. So there are a few things that we're learning along the way that I think have been a real benefit. And there was another point today, Lynn, and I'm trying to remember it, where we had talked about at the time, if indeed we decide to remove the tank as part of the underground storage tank process, as part of that evaluation of whether the soil around the tank is contaminated, one of the things Len was advising is that we might want to keep the hole open in a way that would be safe, of course, and have some sort of pre-approval for if the Mr. Farr and his team discover that the soil around it is contaminated, that we can get in there quickly, cheaper, with our own funds, urban renewal funds, to do that cleanup sort of in the moment, at that time. So those are some things that Len and I will be talking about as this progresses, and I'll be keeping you posted on it as well. So I'm pleased that we're going to be able to realize getting some important funding for this Tony's project, but also I appreciate the education that we're getting along the way that are going to help us move more efficiently through our process. Any questions, board, chair, and members of the board?
Darcy.
Yes, thank you. So one of the questions that's coming up for me is when this first came before City Council and it was presented, we talked a lot about the fact that there is a lot of area, I'll specifically say downtown because this is urban renewal, but also outside of this where we suspect that there is contamination. And I thought that the focus was going to be, as well as helping the projects that we are now, which is excellent. I thought the focus when it's going to be to gather as much information as a city and a community development department as possible about all these areas that we suspect. Obviously, we have to have buy-in from the property owners, but I didn't think that we were requiring them to be doing something at this moment. I thought we just wanted to gather the information because as a city, we're going to need to know for future planning whether or not there really is contamination. And if we're not using this grant for that, it's possible that later on when we want to know this, the landowners won't be able to afford to do those studies on their own, or they'll have some other reason. And I just think it's in the best interest of the city and of urban renewal to really get this information for ourselves and for the future.
Chair Grossman and Board Member Long, I want to just respond to that. In order to do the analysis on the individual properties and to determine if there are contaminants, we do need to have property owner consent. And so we will be, that's really at the heart of the outreach we're doing right now, is asking them, hey, do you want to take advantage of this? And then that way we can gather the information and help identify what the development barriers, redevelopment barriers might be present on the property.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that sometimes people get confused or they don't know, like if they're thinking I'm not going to build right now or I'm not planning to sell, they might not understand, but I think it's in our best interest as an entity to pursue the ones that we especially want to know for the future. And yes, of course they have to agree, but I do think it is going to take more than just an article in the newspaper or something like that. And I know you are working on outreach. I just wanted to bring that point up, that I really hope that we use it as much for us as directly for them, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
The things we're curious about.
Yeah, I made a special point, and I know Jim and Lynn have too, of doing significant outreach in the last, well, at least for me, in the last 3 weeks. And I know Jim and Lynn have been at it longer than I have, really reaching out individually with property owners where we suspect it's a high priority to get them cleaned up. But maybe Lynn and Jim can speak to that a little bit too.
So
Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
I'll just kind of give an example here. There is, as we call it, the paint building there on 2nd Street, just right adjacent to Domino's. It's one of those that just sits there, and it has a tremendous future there if the developer would like to develop it. And he's kind of hard to get a hold of, but I know the family well. He and I have been in discussions on utilizing the grant on that building for a phase 1, phase 2. And he has kind of agreed that when he gets back from Alaska, we will talk. And so that's, we're just trying to do the best we can. We've hit the realtors in town and gave presentation to the realtors because a lot of developers use that avenue. And so we're just trying to get the word out as much as we can. And, we know a lot of people in the downtown. We know a lot of people that live in the Dalles, and just by word of mouth, getting that word out, I think it's going pretty well. Go ahead, Len.
Yeah, and we do have a few other people that participate in what we call our core group. We've got Michael Held and Greg Sveland and Nate. I'm forgetting his last name. Help me out, Jim.
Dice. Nate Dice.
Thank you. So, and they've also been reaching out to people. Michael, I know, for example, is chasing down a piece of property that is apparently owned by the family that owns Juanita's Chips. So some of that direct outreach to property owners for priority sites is occurring, and I think will continue to occur.
Thank you. Fantastic.
Do we have any other questions from the board?
I have one, Chair Grossman. This is
Okay.
Dan. If I may. Roughly how much of that $600,000, just ballpark, has been committed, and how much do we have left to spend?
Yeah, so of the 600,000 to date, only about 3% has actually been spent. If we talk about committed funding, we're probably talking about roughly $100,000 has been committed. So we still have, the vast majority of the funding remains. So plenty of opportunities for additional projects.
Thank you very much.
And Chair, one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this at the board meeting is so that you can help us with the outreach. You can identify properties for us either offline, or you can spread the word with your own networks. And I know you are out and about, and that's an important opportunity for you to tell folks about this incredible opportunity that is available in the next 3 years.
Good. Thank you, Alice. So if we have no more questions for Lynn or Jim, we can move on to our second discussion item, which is discussing the upcoming URA strategy planning. So I'll turn that over to Alice.
Okay, and I will ask Lynn if he can stop the screen share for a second, and then we'll move into our next agenda item. So.
Yeah, let me see if I can figure out how to do that here.
I think it's at the bottom there's something that says screen share, or at the top.
All right, there. There we go.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for the presentation and being available tonight, Len. Okay, the strategic planning effort. I talked about that with you as a board last spring, and I am now coming before you now as with a very, very brief kickoff discussion before we get started. I want to do this session with you all over 2 or 3 meetings. And what I'd like to do tonight is just tell you about how I'm envisioning what the process might look like that I'm proposing to you, and then get your feedback on it and make sure you're okay with the way I'm envisioning this. I am designing this planning effort in a very similar manner to the way that the City Council is currently updating its community vision, and we are using a consultant for that effort, but I am going to copy their scope of work and their plan and use it here. And I do not at this time propose that I'm not proposing to bring a consultant on to help. I think we can do this work in-house unless you tell me otherwise. But I would like to break this into at least 2 parts and potentially 3 parts. And the first one would be coming back next month with a report card. It would basically tell you where we are with our finances. And we already had this exercise last February, but I'll give you a reminder slide or 2 on where we've been financially and where we are today. I also want to dust off the urban renewal plan itself and the project list and identify all of those projects that we've completed so far, and get that information out to you so you can see that, and which projects are remaining, so you have an opportunity to see those. And the other area that I want to identify are those areas where we've loaned money and existing liabilities, those current liabilities that we have out there where we expect a repayment on some loans that we might have out. And I want those to be identified so you're aware of those obligations that property owners have with us, and obligations we have. And we have one incentive that's offered out that we are paying on, and that's that interest. We pay interest on some loans that the private sector has. For instance, the Gayer building and I think the Honnold building are 2 recipients of where we make the interest payments and they pay on the principal. So with those, I plan to bring that back next meeting. What I want you to be able to do is have some time to absorb that, ask questions about what you see next month. And then that can be a vehicle for you all to think on your own for the month on how you might set priorities on those projects that remain on the plan, the urban renewal plan list that are not yet complete, and also any projects that might not fit within the boundaries of any of those projects that we might want to consider doing a minor amendment or something to our plan to add to the urban renewal plan. You may know this, I expect that most of you do, that we can't just go fund anything. It has to be on our approved plan in order to fund the project. And so that's very important part of the urban renewal law. So with that, and then the following month, I'm going to turn off my phone. The following month, I'd like to come back and have more of the visioning session where you would see that after the report card, you would look at the list and start to lay out some priorities against the funds remaining. And you can also give me some, the previous month, you can give me some homework and ask me to go get current cost estimates, for instance, on some of the projects so that I can help you identify how those might fit into the roughly $10 million that might be remaining in the program. So with that, that's my, and then the last month might be the month of December. If I like the idea of being thoughtful. So if we finish up the second session, which would be our visioning session, I'd like an opportunity to come back either at the December meeting or the January meeting and get your blessing on the final draft of our plan. We don't need to be as formal as I'm being, but I think it might be helpful given that we're all coming from this with different levels of history and knowledge of the urban renewal program, and also gives you a chance to absorb the existing plan over the month, and you don't have to be on the spot doing a lot of thinking on the spot. So I throw that out for your consideration and comment, and anything you want to add or subtract from my proposal, I'm willing to hear it.
So do we have some input for Alice as to this process? Are we feeling comfortable with it? Are there anything you'd like to see included? Now's your time to kind of steer where we're going.
Mr. Chair, this
Yes,
is
Darcy.
Yeah, so I like the outline of that. I think that makes a lot of sense. Just kind of thinking ahead, our meeting in December is actually the week of Christmas, and sometimes we've had issues with that. So it would be nice not to break the momentum, I think. So maybe we should just consider at this point, in the next couple months, deciding if we want to just move that meeting up by like a week or something, just so everybody has it on their calendar. And because I think the process that you've outlined is going to be very effectual.
Okay.
Thanks, Darcy. Dan, did you have something?
Sure. I would just, first of all, I would second what Darcy said. I think that's a good thought, that we want to, work with the momentum that's being generated here. So I would second that. And secondly, I would say I like what Director Cannon outlined. I think that sounds appropriate. I think it is appropriate to have a sort of semi-formal process. It's real money that we have left, real projects, real work. And I think we ought to, yes, I think that's the right track, to take it seriously and really use this as an opportunity to reflect on those.
Good, thank you, Dan. Any other comments on strategic planning this evening? Kathy?
I am not terribly familiar with the city council's visioning work, so I wondered if you could review that a little bit and how this work goes along with that.
That is a great question, Commissioner, Board Member Schwartz. I'm new to the city, newer to the city, so I've been here a year. I understand that the city council has about every 10 years updated its community vision. They go through and it's a citywide, obviously a citywide project. They include a variety of different partners, the college, the county, and all of our various partners get a chance to weigh in and participate. And then we also do a community survey, and we're trying to get a roadmap for where do we want to be in this case, the next 20 years. So let's pretend it's 2040. So in 2040, what do we want the Dalles to be, and how can we get there? So we're developing the goals, we're developing some strategies to get there, and we're coming up with a list, and also identifying partners that can help us get there. And what I would say, these two efforts dovetail really well with one another. The one area that I can say with emphatically is that we already have a plan in urban renewal. We're a little bit further along. We know why we're here, and we also know what we're trying to accomplish through projects. We've identified the projects, but to the extent that we can leverage some good ideas that we hear in that community vision and prioritize one project sooner than another, then we can realize some benefits. We also, one of the really great things that could come out of the community vision is we find out that a partner wants to do something similar to what we've identified in urban renewal, then we can add somebody to be part of our team to help us get there. So that could be really powerful. Does that help? And when, you might be asking, when will that process start, Alice? So let me answer. We have a consultant already on board, and they are doing the first step of that project now. They're starting on the report card. We should have a draft report on that in a few weeks, I would say 2 or 3, and then we'll start a kickoff meeting, I think, with our council and a few others. We intend to be through the whole process by spring, by March. we're mindful of the fact that our city manager is retiring and we want to make sure that we have this vision completed before our new city manager arrives, so that that can become a really important opportunity for onboarding for that new city manager. So.
Well, I thank you. I think it would just be important that we get some regular updates from that process so that we aren't working parallel. So that we're really, you know, trying to connect both of those processes, if that makes any sense. So if we could get some updates of, you know, I probably won't be attending all the city council and visioning, you know, so it'd just be nice to know where that train's going as we're doing our own priority work.
Happy to do so, because city managers identified me as the in-house project manager for that project. So I will be able to give you up-to-date information anytime you ask on that project. And I'm excited to be involved in it. So yes, I will give you regular updates, and we are going to want the county commissioners involved in that project. So look forward to inviting you and your colleagues to be part of our public meetings that we're going to have in the coming months.
Okay, do we have any other questions or comments concerning the strategic planning tonight? Not Alice?
I just wanted to say one more thing. I was actually going to call board member Frederick, and maybe I was going to bounce this idea off of him. I ran out of time. So this is what I was going to say to you, John, earlier today. And that is that one of the things that is loud and clear in our urban renewal plan is that whole concept of return on investment. Is that our whole goal in urban renewal is to produce jobs, produce prosperity, produce tax revenue. And so that all boats rise, all of the taxing entities will realize the profit that came from the good work we did in this urban renewal district. And I think that I guess I don't want to speak to the past because I wasn't here, but what I want to be able to deliver in this last bit of time is I want to hit it home. You know, I want to be able to have some projects that are high priority that we can realize some return on investment. So I'm going to emphasize that. And I just have a feeling that board member Frederick will agree with me, but I'd be happy to take any other comments you might have on my point that I just made.
Thank you, Alice. Cost benefit analysis should be done on any government project. You know, we're talking about visioning. I attend city council meetings. I rewatch county board meetings and everything. Our community, I'm probably going to get some people irritated here, but I don't see a vision in our community. I see a bunch of groups that want their own little thing, and it's gone on for years. My wife has lived here 30 years. My wife said it happened long. I've been here about 11, but it's been the same thing over and over and over. And I don't, from past experience with strategic planning, I watched what a well organized plan does, where you get all community input and you get everybody at the table. You know, just because we have our little group and we have what we want to get done, how does this fit in with the city council? How does it fit in with the school district? What are the priorities of this community? And that's been one of my frustrations since I moved here. I really don't see any overall priority, and we seem to work on this project, and this project, and yeah, we get some stuff done, but when it all comes together, it's still isolated. You know, we talk about the downtown, talk about First Street. Let's get the First Street project done. Let's get the open air. Let's you know, the gatherings and things we've talked about. Let's get that done. that's what I don't, that's my frustration, you know, since I've lived here. I just see everybody doing their own thing, and all the government agencies, and they're all doing their own thing, and that I don't know, it just frustrating.
Okay, thanks, John. Any other comments on the strategic planning process? Seeing none at the moment, we will move on to staff comments and project updates. Alice.
Thank you, Chair. I am happy to give you a report just because I see momentum happening right now in our urban renewal district. I did have a chance yesterday to visit the rec building site, and actually Todd Carpenter was hoping to join us this evening, wasn't able to, and even 10 minutes before the meeting told me he couldn't make it and was apologetic, but that project is moving right along. I did take all of your comments to heart, and particularly board member Long, who said we need to clean up the front of that building while the plywood is up. We need to make it look better. And within a few days, he had removed the paper that looked messy. And as I had a chance to share with you, the plywood has come off a couple of different times to do some construction. A lot of the work is going on inside the building, but next week or the week after, there will be some new windows being installed on the 2 new storefronts. So I think the easternmost plywood, the 2 storefronts that sit adjacent to the Granada Theater property, the plywood will come off, and you'll start to see the facade taking shape, and that's really exciting. So the project at this point is on schedule. And so I think as we get into October and November, we'll be refining that and finding out if Mr. Carpenter, Ms. McQuaid need an extension of any kind. There are 2 extensions that are available administratively from me, and then anything after that, after January of 2021, would need your approval. So I'll keep you posted as that moves along, but he's making quick progress here this fall, and it's exciting to watch. So any questions about that project? I understand Coin TV was out today, and you will see in the first week in October, there will be a feature of the Dalles and exploring the gorge on Channel 6, and you will see some footage of the rec building, as well as the Last Stop Saloon and Free Bridge Brewing, and maybe one other business. I'm not sure which one that is. So, any questions?
John?
My wife and I had dinner at the Last Stop last week, and Todd took us on a tour of the inside of what he's done in that building. They just got done earlier today pouring the footing for that front wall, and it's pretty impressive what's going on in there. This gentleman has a vision of what you can tell just the way he talks about how proud he is of it. And he's looking forward to completing it. So hats off to Todd.
And there is also a new shuttle service that's available. It's called Little River City Music Shuttle. That's available now on, I think it's Friday, Saturday, and Sundays, that people can hop on and off the shuttle and go to various music venues and listen to live music all over town, which is a pretty neat effort that some of the business owners have just started on their own. So appreciate that very much. So with that, I'll move on to the next project, the First Street project. That one has been moving along as well. We're still on track to be under construction in summer of 2023. So, and one of the things that happened today is I think it was at the last meeting, I mentioned that we have a contract, and I mean, either you awarded or I awarded a contract to evaluate the structural integrity of the basalt walls that you see along First Street, on the portions of First Street that are where we own parking below grade between Court and Washington, and between Union and Court, and those properties. So we had a chance today to visit the basements of the Blue Building, Tony Zilka's property, Eric Gleason's property, and also the Baldwin Saloon, and the property that sits at the corner of Union, the former Ernest Motors site that sits at the corner of Union and First Street. And it was really interesting to see the condition of that wall. It was interesting to see inside of those buildings. And one notable thing that I wanted to share was just, I had no idea, maybe you all did, but there is basically a room underneath on one of the buildings. I'm not going to tell you which one because I don't want you to go look at it. But underneath one of the one stretch of sidewalk in there, it's basically an open room between the building wall and the edge of the sidewalk. So underneath the sidewalk is hollow, and there's a room that you can walk in under there. And we had a chance to walk in that very scary place today. Fortunately, I was flanked by a whole bunch of civil engineers, and I was very, very safe. But anyway, it's just interesting, the history that we have in that area. And we expect to get the results of that back. And basically the question is do we need, what modifications do we need to make to that wall? And it is considered a historic resource. And will the changes to the wall result in a substantial change, which could slow down the project? So I was there the entire time to promote enthusiasm for preserving the history, all while telling the ODOT staff on site that we don't want to slow down the project. So told them we'll do all kinds of things to preserve the history for this project. And one area I wanted to share with you is, I want to share a screen with you here. Let me do that right now. Our design consultant, let me bump up the size here. Our design consultant has given us now a palette. You've seen some of this before, but now it's getting down to the details. We have a set of plans that's called the 95% plan. And so we're getting down into the details of what will show up, what trees, what types of pavers, what colors, and that sort of thing. So what we're going to have throughout most of the project are, we're going to have, so if you look at this and you see my cursor here that's moving around, we will have about a 5.5 foot wide sidewalk that is concrete. And then we'll have a zone that has pavers, street trees, trash receptacles, and bike racks throughout. And we'll probably have one or more, at least one trash receptacle, and we'll have one bike rack per block. And we're still finalizing the pavers, but this color palette is basically what we like. The inspiration for these colors come from these buildings that we've identified here. One of our staff members doesn't really like the pattern of the pavers here. And so I'm going to work on that to make it, this seems very modern. So want to make it so it's a little bit more historically appropriate. So I welcome your feedback on the pavers, both the materials, but also the pattern. You will notice that a lot of the modern street design, we require these truncated domes that I have my cursor in front of it, the detectable warning panels. This is for ADA accessibility. These are for folks who are vision impaired. They can feel the texture with their feet or with their walking stick, and they can know that they're coming up close to a street. Some of these are yellow in color, and I for one don't like the yellow because it gets dirty eventually, but this is a metal, it's a metal panel that I think will fit well with the color scheme we have. And let's see, let's go to the next page. Oh, is the second page. Let's move on. So this trash can that has been identified is different than the one that's out on the site today. What I will say is I've already talked to the Dallas Disposal just today. The Dallas Disposal has been picking up our garbage in the downtown for free for over 30 years. And I talked to the general manager, Jim Winterbottom, today, and he has agreed to continue, even if we add the new trash cans on First Street. He did ask, however, that we modernize the trash can design so it can become a different design that allows for the storage of a 95-gallon cart to be stored inside basically a little cart garage that can be opened up by the garbage hauler and then put on the truck and dumped, as opposed to the current design, which requires that it really puts the hauler and the person who has to hop out of the truck in a precarious position where they might throw out their back by having to lift the can into the garbage truck. So we're going to be looking at a different design there. I did want to tell you, but the bollards and the metal tree grates, we have, I asked that we continue to use the bike rack design that we currently have established along 2nd Street. And we probably will add the some sort of image on those bike racks as we do in other parts of 2nd Street. We have salmon, cherries, and wheat on those existing ones. These street trees are ones that we believe, at least that our consultant believes, fit into our climate better. And I will tell you also that the current tree grates are 3x3. The proposal for these tree grates is 4x6. And the idea is to make it bigger so that it can accommodate, it can maybe has a better chance of surviving in our rough climate, our arid, I'll say not rough climate, our arid climate. So happy to answer any questions. You see two fences, or this fence that is along, it says fences and guardrails. There is a 6-foot fence that's proposed along the railroad tracks. That would be on the north side of First Street. And then there will be a 4-foot height sidewalk that will replace sort of that crummy looking fence that we have along the agency owned properties where we have the city, the agency owned parking lots where there's a big drop off from the sidewalk. So I guess, Chair, with that, I'm happy to take any comments that you might have on any of these items, and also answer any questions you might have about the First Street project and the progress we're making. I guess before I finish up, I do want to say, I'll stop sharing here and then I can come back to that slide anytime. I do want to say that once we finish this evaluation and provide some comments on the 95% plans, the next phase would really be moving into right-of-way acquisition, where we'll need to acquire some easements and right-of-way in some locations, as well as temporary access easements. So working more directly with the property owners. Fortunately, I've already reached all but one of the property owners along there, so they're well aware of the project, and I'm trying to identify myself as being someone they can reach out to if something isn't making sense as they work with ODOT through the right-of-way acquisition. They can always reach me, and I can translate or help negotiate. So with that, I can answer any questions you might have.
Do we have any questions, comments from the board? Mayor Mays.
Thanks, Alice. I especially like the fence, the trees and the bike racks. And I did have a question about the receptacles. Are those the same? Is it, maybe I missed this, is the plan for the receptacles the same as the existing ones on 2nd and 3rd Street?
Chair Grossman and Mayor, no. The plan that, I'm going to share the screen again. The ones that you see here are not the ones that I think will end up incorporating into the project, because the Dallas Disposal wants to move away from using these. And a lot of cities are moving toward this more modern receptacle. And I can pull up a quick link and show you something. Let me find it. So you can see it's more, actually, I think we already have one of these in, we currently have one of these in the city, and it sits along Court Street in front of, okay, I'm going to stop sharing, and then I'm going to share again this other screen. Okay, so I'm gonna hit this YouTube, and this is 16.
This is the checkers game where grandson and granddad will bond.
16 seconds. So
this is the secure cart garage, a sturdy, attractive metal enclosure for wheeled plastic receptacles used for curbside collection. The cart garage is ideal for where waste collection already utilizes a truck that can tip and empty waste carts. The cart garage is perfect for parks, city streets, businesses, and other curbside pickup applications.
You can't see it?
The wheeled cart is locked safely inside the cart garage, but is easily serviced by opening the door and rolling the cart out.
Darn it.
The cart can be rolled to the truck location for emptying, then returned to the cart garage and locked away.
Let me turn this
The cart
off.
garage
Sorry.
eliminates the need for workers to lift heavy loads.
I think we may be beyond my technical capability. I don't want to get too ambitious with my screen sharing capabilities. So I will stop. Have I stopped screen sharing yet? Or are you still seeing my email?
No, we see you.
Okay, so what I'll do then is I will bring the trash receptacle back next month, but it's more of a boxy, and it's basically a little garage where you can store the 95-gallon roll cart that you have in front of your house, or you might have a smaller one in front of your house, but it allows the trash hauler the opportunity to open it up, pull out that roll cart and attach it to the truck where it gets dumped, instead of having the hauler wrench his or her back and throw it in and maybe injure themselves with the old design. It's a little more modern looking, but it's pretty common with what more cities are doing. Downtown Portland, I got on Street View today and saw them all over downtown Portland, for instance. Not that that's the best example, but I am going to ask the Greenworks, our consultant, to identify which ones might present the best look for what we're trying to accomplish in downtown.
Thank you, Alice. Thank you, Gary.
Okay, do we have any other questions or comments from the board?
I have one more project for you, Chair and members of the board, and that would be the Tony's project. And you did get a pretty good update from us, and very pleased with the progress, as I said, we're making with our grant project. So I don't have much to add. I will know more next month as to where we are with getting the phase 1 work underway. I was a little concerned when I first thought about entering this grant that it might delay things. I have, as I said, I have gotten nothing but responsiveness from Mr. Farr and Jim Schweinoff from our city staff, and I really feel we're going to move right along with this, and they see this as an important priority.
Okay, any other comments for Alice on staff projects? If not, we come up to the time for board member comments or questions. Do we have any board member comments or questions we haven't covered tonight? I see no one waving at me with a desire to speak. Oh, John. John?
I'm there. I have a real concern about planning and all the individual groups in our community that just want to do what they want to do. And that is why I said what I said. You know, urban renewal, we have to go through the strategic planning process, agree 100%, but we are just one part of the entire thing. And all I see is I see individual groups and organizations, they only want to do what they want to do without any regard to what other people. How do we get all these groups to work together for a common goal? Let's pick a project, let's finish it, rather than trying to do 27 different things and everything is mediocre. It's just good enough. And that's my frustration. And I just wanted to clarify that.
Well, John, I always ask those that have a concern, what is your suggestion for a solution? You're on mute, John.
There we go. There needs to be a community-wide discussion to bring all the players to table all at the same time. And it can be facilitated. You're going to have an outside facilitator, bring all the players together, and it's going to have to be just like a strategic planning session for an individual group, where all the different organizations are sitting in the same room and we hash this out and we come down to some goals and how do we move this city forward. I've seen it happen. I've been part of it and it works, but you've got to have everybody in the same room and you got to put your egos away and start working together. And some people are going to get some stuff, some people aren't, but you will get your turn. But let's pick some projects that we need to fix. No, number one is our schools. We need to fix our schools. I don't care what you do downtown. Your school district is what the issue is here. This community needs to have a community-wide discussion. We need an identity, and we need to be working together forward instead of working against each other. So I think every government body, there needs to be a citywide, and not only having the government bodies at the table, but have community members at the table, have the service organizations at the table. And it takes some skill to put it together, but at least at the end of the day, after you've gone through the process, not everybody's going to be happy, but there is going to be a vision, and people are going to understand more of what's going on rather than this constant working on this, working on that project. That's all I got to say.
Okay. Do we have any other board member comments or questions this evening? If not, we will be meeting. Tim, did you have something?
Yeah, I just appreciate the direction that we're moving. And I appreciate Alice Cannon and her she's doing a great job bringing things together. I just want to say that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.
Dan?
Yes, one question for Director Cannon. Alice, what's the sort of next steps for First Street?
Next step. Oh,
yeah.
Sorry, did I let you finish? Okay.
Yeah.
Next steps for First Street. Immediately is getting the structural evaluation completed for the basalt wall. So we have the 95% plan set. That's most everyone except for me has commented on the 95% plan set. I was awaiting until a few days ago. I didn't have the specific board that identified the pavers and all the trash cans and all those things until a few days ago. So I'm going to be providing comments to that 95% plan set. The engineers in Public Works have already given comments to the project. And now we'll get the basalt wall identified and both from a historic standpoint as well as a structural standpoint. And then we will, from there, move into right-of-way acquisition. So more direct work with the property owners. And that concurrently we'll be finishing up trying to speed toward getting 100% plan set that we can prepare to go out to bid. This seems to be taking a long time. I will say it always does when you have a federal money involved and you have ODOT involved in something. No slam against ODOT. I appreciate the grant money we're receiving, but there are a lot of extra steps and hoops when you have another government agency sort of overseeing the project. So, I wanted to share one more thing on that project, and I can bring it back next month, Chair. I have an idea that I want to share as it relates to, I would like to see an opportunity on First Street to incorporate some concrete stamps into each block. And for instance, we have on our, let me bring this back, Chair. I feel like we're getting close to the end, but let me bring an idea back where we can incorporate our cultural history into some of the sidewalk design. And I'd like to have it, well, a little bit more thought out before I talk about it. I could talk for another 10 minutes on it, but I want to make sure I have my message crafted a little bit more thoroughly.
Okay. Other questions, Tim?
Just have one more quick comment about 2nd and Madison. The property has been an eyesore on that side of town for years. We've made huge improvements on that 2nd Street corridor, along with Sunshine and all the development, but that one still stands out and really needs our attention. That's all I want to say about that.
Is that the one that sits behind Dinty's Market?
Yeah, actually, it is owned by them, and it's right next to Domino's. It used to be a Pepsi, used to be a bottling, and it has burn damage from inside. It's abandoned. It's an eyesore, and it really doesn't function. It needs to either be rebuilt. It would be a great place to put something in there, or torn down, in my opinion.
Does the board want me to do something with that feedback?
Comments from the board?
Well,
Kathy?
yeah, I think, isn't that part of the strategic planning process that we're going to, embark upon, kind of setting priorities? That's just my comment on Tim's comment, but I do have a really quick question, I think, Alice. Could you refresh my memory? What are the east and west boundaries for the First Street project? I don't remember, or don't remember if I ever knew.
Union Street is the furthest west, and we will only be addressing the eastern side of that intersection because the western side's already been improved. And then it will extend all the way through to Laughlin Street.
Laughlin.
The reason excuse me.
Oh, yeah, and so that's it. I was gonna say we're also rebuilding the side streets. Every side street except for Federal. Federal, we may do something different with that street, and it also has the former train depot there and the Veteran Services Building. But for instance, Court Street, Washington Street, and Laughlin will all be improved between First Street and the alley. Those will all be improved and rebuilt as well.
Thank you.
Quick comment. I saw it on the Brownfield inventory as one of the properties that was listed there. So that's what prompted me to bring it up.
One of our staff members has already talked to that owner and asked if they wanted to participate, and they did not. They declined, but we can talk about it some more at our strategic planning session about any other efforts we can make with that property owner.
I'll be in touch. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, hearing none, we will be meeting again in October on the 3rd Tuesday. And with that, I would take a motion for adjournment.
I so move to adjourn this meeting.
It's been moved. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, thumbs up. You all have a good rest of the week. It's going to be some good weather, so enjoy.
Thank you.